Welcome back, AP Gov students. Today is Chapter 18, the last chapter of Keeping the Republic, titled Foreign Policy. If you don't have Keeping the Republic, it's fine because the content is still going to be the same. I'm going to be going over all the key terms and notes for this chapter that helped me get a 5, so I encourage you to take notes along as well. Intergovernmental organizations, groups consisting of multiple countries. Notable institutions like NATO, the UN, and OPEC set major foreign policy guidelines and define alliances. When powerful countries come together to compile their resources, they become even more powerful. A lot of these are regional based. For example, OPEC is the group of Middle Eastern countries that control the oil supply. And when these countries come together to better control their oil, it allows them to maximize their self-interests. Non-governmental organizations, groups that focus on private people in many areas. These groups are disconnected from specific governments, which give them more autonomy over their foreign policy actions. A lot of these organizations are humanitarian, medical, charity type organizations. These organizations come together, for example, to help underdeveloped countries or to provide medical assistance for places that don't have, good medical care, things like that. Multinational corporations, businesses in multiple countries. Such businesses are incredibly powerful in influencing foreign relations. They want to insert their interests into all countries involved. So these businesses are active in multiple countries' governments, and they want to influence the government to get the best of their interests. They want each country to pass policies that support their business practices. Cold War, conflict between the US and the Soviet Union. Cold War fallout is still the basic background for foreign policy today. The conflict between capitalism and communism and the differences between Western and Eastern culture define foreign policy issues. That's why I think the Cold War is so fascinating, because even the policies set today on the foreign stage are based back from the Cold War. For example, NATO is literally the organization that was created because of the fallout of World War II and the Cold War. When you examine who in the world are allies, who is at odds with each other, it all dates back to the Cold War. Crisis policy employed in emergency situations. This type of policy is often on quick notice. It can lead to the deployment of major military and medical forces. This is usually done in the case of a national emergency or a foreign emergency. Strategic policy, calculated plan towards specific issues. Major foreign policy initiatives are often targeted at a specific country, region, or problem. Strategic policies are employed when a country, for example the United States, has a specific interest towards a certain situation developing in another country. Structural defense policy focuses on defense and military spending. The amount of money allocated to the military is important. Military spending fluctuates depending on current events. One of the problems with our defense policy now is that recently we have been slightly cutting certain defense spending on the military. Other countries are now spending a lot more on their military, and they have larger military forces than we have now. And that hit at a really bad time, especially with the outbreak of the Ukraine and Russia and Israel, Palestine, things like that. National Security Council, this is just the NSC, advises the president. It notably consists of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, military chiefs, where the chairman advises the president on military matters. Unlike a lot of the old presidents now usually aren't expert military officers, so they rely on the NSC and the Joint Chiefs, the military chiefs, to tell them what they should do when it comes to military policy, because the president is the head of the military, although they don't always have the best knowledge on what exactly to do, so they heavily rely on top military officers to advise them. Department of State manages foreign policy matters. It represents the US in meetings with other countries as well as big treaty negotiations. Even though the president is the symbol of US foreign policy is conducted every day and the president can't always be there, so the Department of State handles matters on a day-to-day basis. Department of Defense manages military and its resources. This body controls where military money is spent and what operations are conducted. The Department of Defense, like the Pentagon, is just the massive head of how our military operates. It makes basically all the decisions. Intelligence community, agencies that handle information and data. This community is ever growing in the digital age. The CIA is incredibly powerful in gathering intelligence and conducting activities overseas and at home. With the growing use of computers and the internet by foreign governments, foreign agencies, and the growing amount of cybercrime and crypto and encrypted networks, the intelligence community is really important. The intelligence community is really important in curbing the top level network of crime. Department of Homeland Security, protecting against foreign threats at home. It plays a major role in counterterrorism and protecting people from violence within the country. So Homeland Security forces are heavily employed when it comes to protecting people from potential terrorist attacks. Hegemon, dominance of one state over all other states. America as a hegemon is a key principle in the foreign policy sphere. America is the most dominant state force in the world and has the responsibility to act like it. It's just a fact that America is the most powerful. It's been this way since through the Cold War. America basically always burdens the responsibility when foreign problems arise. America seems to always involve itself in the foreign problems because they have the responsibility as the leader of the world to support other nations when it comes to crises. General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. This is the GATT agreement. I'm like being dead ass. It's actually GATT. It's not a joke. Encourages fair trade among more countries. It was influential both in its time, but also in starting off a new era that would open up trade. Honestly, this isn't that important. It's just like really funny because it's called GATT and like my entire class made jokes about this. Deterrence, preventing another actor from achieving an expected goal. This policy aims to control or resist foreign states from doing something against the interests of the country. So this strategy is done by countries that have a lot of influence, so like the United States, and they employ certain stuff to basically get other countries from not doing what they want to do. America basically has all the leverage in almost every negotiating situation. Compellence, influencing another nation or actor to do something. This can take place between allies or enemies. It intervenes in another country's affairs to try and make them do something. This idea of compellence, it comes up often when it comes to allies specifically, especially like in NATO, where the US has a lot of, bargaining power in NATO to get the smaller countries in NATO to kind of do what they want to do. Preemption, taking action on an enemy before it has a chance to do something. It functions more as prevention, as it stops growing forces from expanding any further or providing any greater of a threat. These actions can be done through diplomacy technically, but a lot of the time it's just done through force. If a country is gearing up to do something bad, the US can literally just bomb them or, put like a massive military threat on them, and essentially they can just control them that way. Propaganda, catering information to a foreign audience to influence thought, is a powerful and notable tool that aims to alter the culture and way of thinking of other people to change their views. This is done in times of war. Some of the most famous propaganda campaigns were ran by dictators like Hitler, Kim Jong-un, things like that. And it's really powerful in changing your entire people's way of thought and allows foreign policy actions to be taken without repercussions if your people agree with you. Diplomacy, formal and official foreign communication. It is the most legitimate and honorable way of conducting foreign policy. This is the most common way of foreign policy, although it is a little boring and not a lot of diplomatic actions like make the news. Covert operations, specific and secret undercover actions. Countries who conduct these operations escape the blame for actions as they are done in secret or covered up afterwards. And this can be good or bad. Countries can send in secret military operations to prevent bad countries from knowing that they're onto them. This can also be done by bad state actors, specifically in the way of inside jobs or things like they'll do crimes that tie back to a country but they're never found to be tied back to a specific country, things like that. A lot of terrorist threats have theories to be tied back to certain countries, but they're never really caught because they're covert operations. Foreign aid, monetarily assisting other countries. It is sent with a specific purpose, a lot of the time for military help or economic rebuilding. Foreign aid is massive in the aftermath of war, the aftermath of crises, or during war when they're trying to support or prop up a certain country. Aid always becomes a massive debate in the domestic political scene because a lot of people complain about how much money certain countries are spending, especially the United States, how much money we're spending on foreign aid when we should be spending it at home, things like that. Economic sanctions, punishments against other countries trying to sell goods. It serves as a way to influence bad foreign actors by striking at their economy. The US uses sanctions a lot. When countries are doing something bad, they'll try and stifle their economy by employing sanctions because we are a massive importer. We buy a lot of goods from foreign countries. We can shut off other countries' economies by basically saying we're not going to buy anything more from you. And NATO can do this, and those intergovernmental organizations can do this as a collective effort. So all the NATO countries can say that they're employing sanctions on a bad country. And that's a wrap. I will not see you in the next chapter because we are done with the book, and goodbye. Yo, if you're super cool and awesome, you should follow my Twitter or X if you're that kind of person. It's at Clark4724. I post a lot of random stuff on there, but I also post channel updates and when my next videos are coming out. So if you're gonna keep watching my channel, then I recommend you follow, and thanks.